Welcome to Hoop City with Paul Sir on the Deep Dive with my good friend Ben Golliver. Ben, one of the great NBA writers anywhere. And Ben, first of all, welcome. It's great to see you. Great to have you back. And I'm excited to talk playoff basketball with you.
Likewise. I mean, we're right in the thick of it. You know, we got all these series, a whole bunch are tied 1-1, and maybe the series that aren't tied 1-1 have more drama than the series that are tied 1-1 with the referees and the Houston offense falling to pieces. I mean, we got so much we could hop into.
Well, I actually, oftentimes, too often, in fact, I kind of go with the gut. Try to have good background and go with the gut. But today I thought, no, I got to write some stuff down because there are some nuances here that are very, very interesting. This is an unexpectedly dramatic start to the first round from I think from a lot of people's vantage point. And I'm going to start with the one the other night that, you know, you and I talked. Who had your opinion of who had the most, who was most significant? I can't even remember exactly how I phrased the question with you, Ben, but who were you looking for the most? Who were you looking forward to the most in the playoffs? And you said Wemby. And of course, Wemby was otherworldly in game one, like literally otherworldly. The moves he made and the things he did, and a 5 for 6 from three. I mean, it was just a ludicrous performance. And then the dreaded next game, just when things couldn't be going any better, he's now in concussion protocol. Talk about that incident, and it sounds like he's in the protocol, being monitored. Thankfully for that, that's a hopeful sign. But what did you think when you saw the fall?
Oh, I mean, just the highs and lows, the whole spectrum, because you get game one down in San Antonio, their first home game in 7 years, and it's a complete inferno. I mean, all those T-shirts, and you could tell Wemby was just so cranked up. I mean, going to the full court spin moves, driving through traffic, he kind of looked like Kyrie Irving, except in a 7'5" body. It's what's happening. And, you know, always in the back of your mind when you're marveling over Wemby, you're also thinking like, hey, man, be careful. You're not kind of built like everybody else. Exactly. Something could go wrong. And that's what happened with the concussion play. I mean, he just face planted onto the court. And, you know, I think you mentioned that he's in the concussion protocol. I take it as a good sign. He didn't travel to Portland for games 3 and 4. My assumption when I heard he was going to the concussion protocol is they might just leave him in San Antonio for the week and try to bring him back for game 5. Now, maybe if they win game 2, they feel like they can slow play it, or maybe he's saying, hey, I feel good and I'm confident I'm going to get cleared pretty quickly. But typically a concussion is like a 7 to 10 day injury in the NBA. And in the playoffs, that means you're missing at least 2 games, if not more. So I take it as a good sign. I even saw a picture of him just lightly shooting hoops today. You know, all sorts of side effects can arise, whether it's sensitivity to light, noise, right, dizziness, just feeling like vertigo almost, so you don't know where you are, confusion. And so it makes it very difficult to play in the NBA. We remember back in the day, Scottie Pippen used to deal with like migraine headaches, right? And, you know, that would shut him down in major playoff games. And you know, I think in some cases undercut his legacy a little bit. So agreed. This is scary stuff. And I would just urge complete caution. Now, the worst part for San Antonio, other than Wemby's health, was how they played without him down the stretch, because they could not score. They collapsed. They give up a big lead. Portland comes back and evens the series. Now you're going to Portland. That place will be an inferno for game 3. That's going to be a tough place to win on the road. And so, you know, it becomes this thing where San Antonio needs Wemby back. I mean, they're going to be kind of counting the seconds here until he's back on the court. And that's not where we expected for this team that just breezed to 60-plus wins, and they looked like they were a surefire title contender. I mean, they're already in the thick of it here in the first round. And meanwhile, they wanted to be on a collision course with Oklahoma City, right? Well, Oklahoma City's just breezing through just like everybody expected. And so I think there's huge implications here, right? Whether he can play, how well he can play. It is still the top story to watch, even though he probably won't be on the court for game 3, I would imagine.
I think you're right. And I think the fact that they have to moderate their expectations of when he should come back. And of course, you balance that out with the long term. I get that, but you have this very, very real short-term need. It'll be interesting to see how the Spurs respond in game 3, because you could obviously see how rattled they got. This Spurs season was incredible, but this is the new season that they have no experience. and it's a whole different type of pressure. And to Portland's credit, boy, did they step up. And even in game one, as dominant as Wemby was, as well as the Spurs play, I mean, you're talking about I can't remember if it was 9 or 11 point victory, but you're not talking about a blowout.
Right.
They hung around, and Denny was fantastic in it. And now in game two, other players are stepping up. They're getting comfortable. So Portland's they've gone from lucky to be in to what looks like could very well be a tough out for the San Antonio team.
Well, it's a great situation here where we can look at the importance of Wemby dictating matchups. Usually playoff matchups are dictated by the best player. And so when you have Wemby in the paint, taking away all the drives, and all Denny wants to do all day long is drives, you feel very, very comfortable if you're the Spurs that you're going to win that game plan and you're going to be able to hold Portland's offense in check. You take Wemby out, and now you realize that Portland has 3, 4, 5 different guys who are good perimeter defenders, and the rest of your offense without Wemby is all guard-based. De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, Stephon Castle, those are your lead playmakers. Portland has great matchups for those guys on the other end. And so now you thought you were going to win this series with defense if you were the Spurs, and now you're panicking saying, wait, we got to figure out a way to generate enough offense to be able to win this series. And meanwhile, for Portland, they're in the same place they were entering the series. Like, they've got their guys. They're getting some, nice contributions from like a Scoot Henderson kind of out of nowhere with the big game too. They're going to have I promise you, they're going to shoot the 3-ball well in game 3 because they're going to have that home crowd behind them, and they're probably going to get out in transition a lot. And so all those kinds of things, it makes you nervous if you're a Spurs fan. The only thing I would, say on their defense, they have a lot of experience playing without Wemby this season. He missed a lot of time, and actually he came off the bench quite a bit. And they've got Luke Cornett, who's a solid option there as a backup. And they actually have a whole bunch of other guys who aren't solid options, but they just stacked up on center. So they've got guys who could fill the minutes, the next man up thing. They have bodies, but it's the only players that you would say could have as big of an impact on their teams if they were to miss time would be Shea and Joker compared to Wemby. And I mean, it's a top 3 there. Even look how well the Lakers are getting by without Luka. I mean, it's that big of an impact when you're talking about Wemby.
Well, and we're going to go to the Lakers next, but I think a critical point was they were 12-6 without Wemby this year. They've demonstrated. It looked to me the other night, it was the moment got to them in the fourth quarter, and they were not. They didn't know how to synchronize that, and that learned behavior in the playoffs is experience based. And when you don't have that experience, it's like standing over a 3-foot putt when it really matters.
Right.
That's a whole different type of pressure.
It's a great point, and I think we should also layer on top of that the expectations, right? Because San Antonio has to win this series. They're expected to win this series. I wouldn't say Portland has a ton of playoff experience either, but it's so much nicer when you're the underdog, right? And so, that putt, hey, if the putt's to beat Tiger, great, it's just a little different of a dynamic. And so I think that both those things are really at play here. De'Aaron Fox is the guy that I circle. He's making huge max money. He was a big swing for San Antonio. He was in a great playoff series a few years ago against Golden State, and they pushed him all the way to 7 games, came up a little bit short. I was at a couple of the games there in Sacramento. He had some great performances individually. He needs to channel that version of himself. I'm talking about 35, 40-point games where he's lighting it up from outside. He's racing end to end. He's carrying the offense. He's creating open shots for guys like Champagnie and their other shooters. Like, we need that all-around type performance from De'Aaron Fox. I mean, I don't want to call this like a legacy moment for him, but he's been in the NBA a long time and not won a darn thing. So this is a great opportunity to pick up the slack and hold down the fort while Wemby is gone. You just got to split in Portland. You don't have to take both. Exactly. Just extend the series, bring it back home, and Wemby will take care of the rest once he's healthy.
Absolutely. He'll bring the mop in and he'll clean the floor. There's no doubt about that. I'm talking to Ben Golliver here on Hoop City with Paul Sir on the Deep Dive. Let's talk about the Lakers. I think there's some surprise. Yes, they're 2-0. You can make an excuse, I guess. In game 1, Kevin Durant didn't play for Houston. What stood out to me, though, is how, like you said, their offense sputters. One thing I really struggle with coaching, I get it, and yet I question it heavily, how coaches panic in the playoffs and they shorten their bench and they go away from what they've done all year that has worked for them, and they narrow everything down into this unfamiliar blend of players. They bench people that they've been trusting all year. Now, all of a sudden, Reed Shepherd looks like he's in the doghouse, and they can't shoot, and they don't have a point guard, and he's not on the court. So I look at Houston. They look like a team they have a combination of limitations with their offense, what they can do to manufacture points outside of Kevin Durant. And now you've got a coach that looks like he's trying to tighten things down and control things to a point that may or may not work. And having said that, Luke Kennard was fantastic. LeBron is unbelievable. He's been unbelievable in these 2 games. The leadership, the effectiveness, unreal. So question always is, after 2, it's a 7-game series. They certainly can respond. What does your gut say about the Houston Rockets? Will they respond?
I think that they will probably get at least one of these games back home, but I think they're in deep trouble. I think all season long there was a lot of red flags about their team chemistry, whether they did have belief in Ime Udoka, how well Kevin Durant and Alperen Şengün complement each other, and then the lack of the point guard situation. It's sort of like they decided at midnight to walk down the dark alley without the point guard, and they knew something bad could happen. And then sure enough, they get to the playoffs and something bad is happening. They're getting mugged.
Yes.
And, it's like, well, you should have known. Everybody else was warning you, don't do that, and they did it anyways. With Kevin coming back for game 2, I thought, he looked okay in the first half, but he really struggles in the point forward role with extra pressure and attention in terms of the reads. And then later in games, in terms of his fatigue, he was throwing the ball all over the gym. He didn't know where the double teams were coming from. He didn't know where his release guys were. I put some of that on Udoka because I don't think Udoka really has a good scheme for how to beat pressure in terms of like having a playmaker like Amen coming to get the ball and then attacking the backside of the defense. I mean, remember when teams used to try to double team Steph Curry at half court and it would just be the quick pass to Draymond. Draymond would turn and it's immediate, either a layup or a wide open corner 3. Right. It would be like tic-tac-toe. I don't know what sport the Rockets are playing. It feels like I was compared to the other day. Their whole offense is just based on offensive rebounding. They're like a football team who builds their offense around trying to recover onside kicks. Like that's how they play. You never would do that. It's just a terrible idea.
We use a phrase in 3x3 basketball, chuck and chase.
Yeah.
Get it up on the rim and go find it. You have fewer players, a smaller court, the real short shot clock. So you go, but that's you're right with the offensive rebounding overemphasis with Houston, the lack of situational awareness. And unlike LeBron, at times Kevin Durant looks his age more than LeBron does. And why wouldn't he? With the injuries that he's had to overcome, why wouldn't he? 37 is still 37. So, the fatigue, like you mentioned, all of that. And I think, too, just a genuine disconnect that looks to me like I try to watch coach's body language for what it's worth. And his body language, the coach's body language is terrible.
Yeah.
The eyes are not good. The eyes are not confident. They're very anxious. It's not the kind of look that you want to see from your coach.
Doesn't really seem like he likes his team, and it doesn't really seem like he likes many of his important players. And I would actually single out Şengün because I can actually see some of Udoka's frustrations. Mm-hmm. Defensively, he's just such a limited player, and you're sort of bound to play him because they don't have Adams, and Capella is well past his prime, and so they don't have a lot of other interior options. But he gives up a lot inside. And then what's really been frustrating to watch offensively, in addition to KD's turnovers, which are just emblematic of a poor ball movement and player movement, just stagnation. But when Şengün tries to go one-on-one from the perimeter, it's like you'll just, as a defense, you've already won the possession. If he starts to dribble and try to go into his moves and spin moves, and he's putting up so many bad shots, very little touch. It just seems like he's out of rhythm, no confidence. And I would probably trace some of that back to coaching because it does seem like his relationship with Udoka is not super healthy, but he's just having a really bad series. I mean, through 2 games, he's probably been the biggest disappointment in the entire league of any player. And so if that's your supposed franchise center or one of the faces of your future and he's not able to get it done, that's a big problem. The other guy who I think has skated on some of the criticism, and it's not that he's bad, he's just a flawed player. That's Amen Thompson. His offense really becomes line drive into traffic and then just chuck it up like you were talking about earlier, that 3-on-3 style. He can't space the court. He's not a great distributor for his teammates. As athletic as he is, I wish he would get out and transition more. That would really, really help. Just get some pick sixes, take a steal to the house for an easy dunk, open things up a little bit. He is just not a very skilled player in space, and that is biting them too because he's their other young rising star who's really just not bringing a lot to the table.
Well, and I think you identify exactly what his strength and weakness is very much simultaneously. Is he's a straight line player. He doesn't have any real junk to his game. He has athleticism, and when he can't overwhelm you with athleticism, his limitations on how he can score really show up. He needs to have he and his brother need great off seasons in terms of offensive versatility. That always comes back to bite you in the butt. And Reed Shepherd is not the answer. He's an undersized 2-guard in the NBA, but he is a great shooter and he is a release valve. Şengün, I just watch how he plays, and so often in the NBA, it drives me absolutely nuts. If you don't want him out there, then don't give him the ball out there.
Right.
Get his butt in the post and get it into him and play more inside out. I think that's one of the big flaws in the game, playing inside out. And I'm even going to, when we get to Denver, Minnesota, I'm going to criticize Jokic for the same exact thing. But, Houston looks like a mess. But give me, you've been there. You sat there. You watched it up close and personal. Talk about the Lakers.
Well, the post-up point is a really interesting one because the guy who has been in the post a lot is LeBron. And this was a tactic that he used to use back in the Cleveland days, his second Cleveland tenure, when they were going up against more skilled or more talented, more athletic teams. Absolutely. He would say, give me the ball in the post. I want to slow this game all the way down. And I would just try to surgically pick apart, find open shooters. And I think in this series, it's actually been a little bit more of LeBron is going into the post to look for his own offense because he feels like he has favorable matchups with Josh Okogie or some of the other guys who they're guarding him with. He's been getting into it with Jayshawn Tate. I mean, no one's going to refer to Jayshawn Tate in 10 years from now as the LeBron stopper. That's just not going to be a nickname that he's going to earn, right? And so
nobody's
LeBron
going to remember Jayshawn Tate in 10 years,
right?
With all due respect to a guy who's in the NBA, very few people make it, but he's not that kind of memorable player.
I don't think you could say all due respect in that situation, but I think you're right. I know.
Some of the Canadian politeness has permeated me. So
I'm just teasing you. No, so they have a real problem defending LeBron. I think in those post situations, they just don't have a great matchup for him. And I think what LeBron has found in terms of father time is it's harder for him to create on the perimeter when he's facing up and try to get advantages turning the corner against a set defense. Now, when he goes into the post, if he draws a second defender, there's a great easy pass. If not, he just kind of burrows his way down closer and gets around the rim. Maybe he gets fouled. Maybe he gets a higher percentage shot. There's probably been 10 shots through 2 games that LeBron has missed that he would have made 2 years ago, I should say. I mean, you do see his legs and his own fatigue, but he's such a well-rounded player. He finds other ways to kind of help out. And I think the stroke of genius from JJ Redick, the Lakers coach, has been turning Luke Kennard loose. We had a real long phase there in the NBA where it's like you're either a lead ball handler or you're only a catch and shoot guy. There's nothing in between. Don't even bother trying to be a secondary playmaker. If Harden's your teammate, he'll do all the dribbling. You stand in the corner and just get ready to hit that open three. And for somebody like Luke Kennard, he's a little bit in between those skill sets. He has a lot of dribble creativity, and he has some pretty good passing instincts too, knows when to hit backdoor cutters. He's a very well-rounded, offensive player, and he's gotten to show it because they need somebody else to step up and replace Luka and Austin. I can't believe how well he's done it in those 2 games. And you start to look around like Luke Kennard, a guy who the Lakers picked up for peanuts at the trade deadline. He's only been there a couple of months. He's a better scorer and passer than practically anybody Houston has on their team, right?
Absolutely.
And so, you start to wonder, why didn't Houston make a similar move at the deadline? Because look what an impact it's having on this particular series. And instead, they sat on their hands and they never replaced Fred VanVleet, and they're really paying the price for it.
Dennis Schroeder's buried on the bench in Cleveland. And, I mean, he's not all NBA, except when he plays in FIBA and world. Then he's all world. But what an addition he would have been, and he was right for the picking, and they chose to sit on their hands. Totally agree with you. One of the things that I've always been fascinated with in the NBA, Ben, is when players finally get the opportunity, not just to show what they do, but to be given the confidence that we need you to do this now, and they rise to the occasion. It's only 2 games. It could change. But Kennard, I think, throughout his career has demonstrated he has this capability, but because he's not lightning quick on defense, a lot of times that kind of player in the NBA gets marginalized far too often, and they don't take advantage of the skill set he has, shooting the ball. Clever, not spectacular, but clever, solid playmaking. And you become a much better team because his fundamental grasp of the game is so good.
Yeah. No question. And I think there's been a lot of success stories for the Lakers across the board. I would say Rui Hachimura has had a pretty good series. Now, DeAndre Ayton had a good game 1, not so good in game 2, but Jackson Hayes was able to step up. And so they've sort of neutralized Şengün at that center position, which coming into the series, you would have said that's a major matchup advantage for Houston. So the trick for Houston, this whole series comes down to their offense. Can they unlock stuff? Can they hit more 3-pointers? Their bench is hardly giving them anything. Can any of those guys make an open shot? The Lakers defense has been very good in terms of pressure, especially on Kevin Durant. It's been pretty good in terms of recovery and getting back to shooters. I mean, they're still giving up some open shots that Houston is just not able to hit. Right. And that was the story for the Rockets last year, actually, against Golden State as well. I mean, when push really came to shove, late in that first round series, everybody kind of assumed, well, Houston's younger, they're more athletic, they'll probably be able to outlast Golden State, right? Or at least that'll be the game plan. And instead, it was Houston whose offense just ground to a halt, and they couldn't find out any other way to score, and then they went home in the first round. I could easily see that happening again this year. And, at that point, Houston's going to face major existential questions. You don't want to write the story before it gets there, but exactly. Do you keep Ime Udoka? Do you trade Şengün? Do you trade Kevin Durant? What do you do? Because I don't think if you just brought Fred VanVleet back, this whole situation gets fixed, right? Because, this team will get run off the court by the Oklahoma City Thunder if they do reach the second round of the playoffs.
The Oklahoma City Thunder, the dreaded juggernaut, that's going to be the expectation in almost, not all, but almost every series.
The Grim Reapers, that's how I'm calling them now. Everybody's afraid.
Well, let's talk on them briefly, though. Shea was spectacular last night. A shout out to the Canadian contingency. Shea with 35 and Dylan Brooks. What did he call Shea? Fragile. Yeah, he's a little fragile, so he gets the calls. But Brooks has 30, so the Canadians showed well last night. Williams has got a hamstring issue again. What do you think? How does this? I mean, they played really well without him all season long. Do you see that as a major loss? I mean, he's an all-NBA guy. Of course, he's a major loss. But Oklahoma City is not your typical team, right? And they give a whole new thing to next man up.
Well, this is how I would phrase it. I cannot remember in the last 10 years a A-list title team losing its quote-unquote number 2 player in a playoff game to a pretty serious injury, and it was not even the story after the game. The story after the game was Devin Booker whining about the officials, and now the Suns owner is hopping on top, and everyone's going after why did he get this crazy technical foul? And they made some valid points. There was a couple of weird calls in that game, but that's not Absolutely. Why they lost the game, right? No. And so for Oklahoma City, the fact that they can lose a player of Jalen Williams' caliber, who had a great first half and was really clicking on all cylinders. And it's like, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? I mean, that's the That's kind of the reaction to it. It's crazy. It speaks to their depth and their togetherness. They don't skip a beat without him. And I was impressed by Shea in his post game. He didn't sound particularly concerned. It's not like he loves J-Dub. I mean, these guys have been teammates for a long time, but they realize they're not built with like this big three model where they have to have their stars on the court or they can't win. They are built around depth and defense with Shea just, carrying the load on offense and AJ Mitchell stepping up and Chet stepping up. They've got plenty. So I think even if Jalen Williams doesn't play another minute in the playoffs, they could still win the championship. And I say that in part because of their path. I mean, they're looking at a scenario where they should have a sweep or 5 games in the first round, a sweep or 5 games in the second round. And then now you're in the conference finals, probably against either, it could be Denver, San Antonio, Minnesota, it could be anybody, who knows? But, with these upsets and these injuries and so forth. But regardless, whoever gets there is going to have a much harder path than Oklahoma City will. They're going to have a rest advantage. They're going to have that incredible home court advantage. They've got the experience advantage. They've got the best defense in the NBA. I just think they're going to win the Western Conference. And so then now you're looking and saying, well, their biggest threat would be a fully healthy Boston team making it all the way through the East to face them in the finals. And that would be a challenging matchup without Jalen Williams, no question. They could lose that series, but almost any other scenario that doesn't involve a fully healthy Boston, I would still take them, pretty comfortably in the finals as well. And so it's a unique dynamic, and it's actually one that makes me wonder this summer, as the bigger contracts start to kick in for Oklahoma City. Shea's making a fortune, right? Jalen Williams has been on a bargain deal until now. Next year, he'll be making a fortune. Chet will be making a fortune starting next year. I wonder if Jalen Williams becomes a player they could trade potentially, where you could send him. I'm just imagining a team like Brooklyn or a team like Chicago, one of these young teams that needs a centerpiece player to build around. Could you trade Jalen Williams there and get, a classic Oklahoma City return, 4 first-round picks or whatever Sam Presti would want to kind of spin things forward? Because as good as he is, you could argue he might be better running his own team. And Oklahoma City might be better from a financial standpoint of spreading his money out to other players and sticking with their depth approach. Again, I'm writing stories 3 months in advance, but these are the things that run through your mind as you watch them run teams off the court without their second best player.
Hoop City with Paul Sir and Josh Fenwick. Thanks so much for spending your morning with us, or however much time you were able to spend with us. We sincerely appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about the Edmonton Stingers. The CEBL season is just around the corner, and by that I mean opening night is May 9th down at Hall D at the Expo Center. It's going to be another exciting season number 8, I believe, for the CEBL. Now the Stingers have made a couple of G League player announcements in the past week, with more announcements to come. You can go to the Edmonton Stingers .com website and buy your season tickets, buy your game tickets, and it's going to be an exciting year for CEBL basketball here in the capital city. Let's talk about each of the series now, Josh, and about what we think is going to be the outcome of all of the first round playoff action that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's lead off with what's currently live right now. Detroit leading 36-33 over the Orlando Magic in Orlando. Currently, the Pistons hold the series lead. How do you think this matchup goes? Oh, sorry, my bad. No. The series is tied 1-1. That's on me.
Series is tied 1-1. I think the Magic surprised everybody when they beat the Pistons in Detroit on the first night. Detroit seemed to right the ship. Cade Cunningham seems to have recovered nicely from his collapsed lung situation. So I think Detroit, of course, is favored in this. But it was good to see Orlando respond with a win in Game 1, because the Magic have been one of the franchises that have probably been heavily criticized, justifiably so, all season long. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, but I think the expectations were very, very high for the Magic this year, and they just really didn't live up to them. So they've made it much more competitive. I think, of course, so I would look for Detroit to win in 6. That would be my prediction right now. How about yourself, Josh?
Yeah, I think this is a gentleman's sweep. I'm going Detroit in 5.
Okay.
I just think they're simply too good. Unless this is Orlando getting hot at the right time because they were supposed to be a good team and this is where they landed. But
gentleman's sweep is a fair call.
Gentleman's sweep. All right, later today in the currently 2-0 lead series from the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Phoenix Suns. How do you think this is going to go?
This will be a sweep, a true sweep. Even with the loss of Jalen Williams with his hamstring injury, I think the Thunder are just too good. Phoenix has had a marvelous turnaround season. I think it's safe to say that they exceeded all expectations in how they performed this year. The other night, I think it's noteworthy to mention that the two leading scorers for the teams were Canadians. Of course, the destined to be league MVP and already selected clutch player of the year, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Oklahoma City with 35. And the tough guy, Dylan Brooks, who referred to Shea as fragile. And that's one of the reasons why he gets so many calls that a lot of players complain about in the NBA. But Brooks had 30 that night in a much tougher, tighter contest than the blowout in Game 1. But I look for this to be a pretty easy call of a 4-0 sweep for OKC.
Not a big difference between us on this one, Paul. I am also going for the sweep. The Thunder are simply a wagon. Okay, now for the shocking series so far of the playoffs. New York and Atlanta getting going at 4 p.m. today. Atlanta leads the series 2-1. How do you see this one going out?
I'm really torn on this because I want to say that the New York Knicks will find a way to turn this around. They have, as we talked about in our opening segment, the two losses that the Knicks have is NBA history. No other team has lost two consecutive playoff games by 1 point before. So I think you've got a team in New York that should be winning this series. Arguably, it should be 3-0. I think that's not a stretch. Although Game 3 was back and forth and Atlanta did have a lead into the fourth quarter. I'm going to say I'm going to go with Atlanta in 7. I don't really believe what I'm saying, but I don't believe in the Knicks either. So what the heck? I'm going to go with Atlanta because C.J. McCollum has proven to be a handful, and I really don't know what – I'm curious to see what the Knicks do in their adjustments, and that if the players will buy in their adjustments, not just on C.J. McCollum, but on the other very, very good Atlanta players. And we really haven't seen the best out of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So I think there's a lot of room on the top side for Atlanta as well. So I'm going to go with Atlanta in 7.
Yeah, I'm going to be more convicted in my assessment of this series. I'm going to say Hawks in 6.
Okay.
I am incredibly impressed with what I've seen from the Hawks, and my main issue going into, or issue, thank you to our friends at the CBC, with issue.
I like issue.
The issue with the Atlanta Hawks for me going into the playoffs was I did not know if they had the horses on offense to get things going. CJ McCollum turning it on. I'm like, we got it, because Dyson Daniels, good defender, Jalen Johnson, good defender. Like, they have a very defensively sound team. My question going in was, can they keep up with the offense of New York? They have. They've exceeded it by 1 point, sure, but they've done it. And so I'm taking the Hawks in 6 here.
Well, and they've won 2 clutch games.
They've won 2 clutch games. That's important. Last year, we probably would have swung that in the Knicks way. Jalen Brunson, clutch player of the year last year. But
And Brunson's a great player, and I don't want to malign him, but there are limitations. And as you were talking about of Becky Hammond's comments about not being able to win a championship when Jalen Brunson is your number one option, I tend to agree with that. As great as he is, he needs at least another equal, if not better, player. And Karl Anthony Towns is a true post, because from Towns, you don't know if you're going to get good rebounding numbers every night, but you don't know in terms of offensive productivity what you're going to get every night. That could range usually from like 12 to 25. He's capable of dropping 25 on any night. But I do agree with you. I think that Atlanta has earned the right now for people to go out on a limb and say, you know what, they might just take this series away from the Knicks. And then if that happens, as we talked about earlier, the offseason in New York is going to be explosive, to say the least.
Yeah. All right. Now, final game of the day. I'm getting going at 6:30 tonight. Your Minnesota Timberwolves hold a 2-1 series lead over the Denver Nuggets. How do you see this one going?
I'm going to go with the Timberwolves in 6, because I think with Aaron Gordon's health being suspect, they're in tough. Christian Braun has been a huge disappointment to me. He absolutely needs to be at least something resembling a contributor on offense, and so far he hasn't been. Jokic, as we talked about earlier today, has not been what we expect from Nikola Jokic at all. Jamal Murray's been very good, but the other night he got locked down. Jaden McDaniels, he's 6'9", and he has a 7-foot wingspan, and he's athletic. When you see him able to keep Jamal Murray in front of him full court, you know you've got an exceptional athlete. Now, this all hinges on Nikola Jokic. We know from past history, Jokic is capable of putting an inferior team on those big, broad Serbian shoulders and carrying a team to a series win. But I don't think they have the horses anymore, and I am curious to see how the Minnesota Timberwolves handle the success that they've had in the past 2 games. If there is a question mark for the Wolves, it's the health of Anthony Edwards, because that runner's knee, as Alan Horton, their play-by-play voice, pointed out earlier, is problematic. He's always rubbing his knee. But the way the Wolves have been able to fill in around him, and with the play in particular off the bench of DeSunmo, this makes the Wolves much more potent offensively when they have to go to their bench. And if Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo can continue their high level of play, I just think that combined with the defense of Rudy Gobert might be too much for the Nuggets to overcome.
Yeah, you hit what I was going to bring up for my prediction of Wolves in 5. I was super high on the Nuggets coming into this series, and now I'm just not anymore. And it really hinges on Rudy Gobert is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year winner,
and he's mad because he finished 4th in the voting this year.
Yeah,
and he's out to prove something. And so far in 2 games, he has.
There's that, and also he looks like a way better defender than he ever was in those 4 years that he won the DPOYs. He's actually going one-on-one with Nikola Jokic and winning. Like, it is psychotic. No one should be able to go one-on-one with Jokic and win on the defensive end of the ball, but he's doing it. And then Ant, incredible offensive player. Ayo great. I was talking about him earlier today, and Jaden McDaniels, like, they are so good two-way that I'm like, without Aaron Gordon, who is a huge piece to this team, is like the Nikola Jokic's security blanket, essentially, because they were bred in a lab to play with each other.
Very good.
I think the Wolves just
Petri dish.
They're too fast,
test tube baby.
They're too strong. They're too long. I'm going to take the Wolves in 5 here,
and they're too physical. And I think if the Nuggets, for me, the Nuggets, it all comes down to the word if. If the Nuggets had Peyton Watson, who had an outstanding season up to his injuries, if Aaron Gordon were healthy, I think this would be a very different series, because the Wolves would not be able to pick on Jokic so much, and they would be better defensively, particularly if Watson was in the lineup and in the rotation, because he also is a good rim protector as well as a better on-ball defender than any of the other players are for the Nuggets. What about the next series?
Yeah, the next series we have is Cleveland-Toronto.
Well, you know what? I'd love to think the Raptors have a shot at this. I just don't. So I'm going to go with the Cavs. I'm going to go with the Cavs in 6, because I don't think the Raptors, without quickly being available, like Chet is a great backup point guard, and he's a gutsy player and a real strong floor leader. I just don't think he's quite enough at the point guard position. I don't think you're going to get 33. I think that's the only the 4th time in Raptors history that 2 players scored over 30 points in the Raptors lineup in a playoff game. You're not going to get that every night. RJ's been good. Scotty's been very, very good. We talked earlier about Ingram. If he doesn't emerge and start contributing meaningfully, I think the Raptors are going to be in tough because I don't know that they can contain Mitchell and Harden night in and night out. So I'm going to go with Cleveland in 6 games.
Yeah, the Raptors also just hit every 3 last game, which they have not done all season.
Yeah, they had a night.
It was a statistical outlier. Cavs in 5. They're too good.
Okay.
Spurs Portland. Spurs lead 2-1.
I'm going to go with the Spurs in 5. If Wemby gets back in Game 4, I think that is an insurmountable obstacle for them. The Spurs did one of the most intelligent things. You talk about intelligent acquisitions in the offseason or at the trade deadline when they brought Cornette in from Boston, because that was the perfect move to make for this exact situation. With Wemby being 7'5", with him being a slender dude, with him having had injury issues in his first couple of years in the league, they prepared for that by bringing in not a player of the same caliber, but a very good 5-man in Cornette who can come in and fill in effectively. They have tremendous young talent, as we talked about often on this show and is well documented. And I think Portland, they've made great strides, but I look for the Spurs to win this series out and win in 5. And we now are getting to the end of the show. I'd love to continue going on. I apologize for that. Gone a little bit long. You're listening to the song by Worst Days Down, which is led by my son, Ben. Well, we just this past week had to remember Ben on the 3rd anniversary since he passed. In honor of Ben, every week I make mention of this. Make sure you tell the people that are important in your life that they are important. If you have love for them, make sure you let them know. And treat your fellow person, your fellow man, your fellow woman in your life with the greatest of respect, because we aren't walking in their shoes. Think the best of others and always be kind. Thank you so much for joining us today. Josh, thanks. This has been a great show.
Yeah, really has. Looking forward to next week.
Always. And enjoy all the playoff basketball that's coming up this week. And we look forward to being back with you next weekend here on your sports leader, Sports 1440 with Hoop City with Paul Sir and Josh Fenwick.